Yes, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the nice introduction, and thanks for the sales pitch you already gave. So nothing to do on my side anymore. It's a pleasure being here. It's for me the first time being in Lithuania. So thanks a lot. So far, everything I've seen since arrived yesterday was really fantastic. So and great weather. So I think it's usually this like it is today. I have lots of slides, so we're going to start right away and talk about the future of tracking and doing business in a cookieless world. So, oh, do I have a clicker, or do I have to say next slide? Oh, there it is. There we go. So basically, if you think of competition, competition is easy. You just have to be better than the others, right? And how do you do that? And we're going to touch a few fields how you can be better than the competition and what has changed over the last years. And this can be shown as an iceberg. So basically, if you think of the current infrastructure of companies, many things got automated in terms of campaigning, and there are lots of technical stuff and processes and infrastructure which is actually below the water level. So lots of things to take care of, and we're going to touch many of these things because this is important of being better than the competition. So already in 2021, Performance Max was introduced by Google. And when I was working for Google, so I started working for Google at the end of 2005, and there were a huge bunch of so-called account strategists. And those were studied people who were searching for keywords, for changing the text in the Google AdWords at that time, and changing letters and words, and so to optimize the AdWords campaigns at that time. And that was manually done. So it was a manual process. These days, especially with PMax, everything is automated. So you don't really have to take care anymore of searching for the right keywords. You don't have to take care of the infrastructure, of creatives, and especially in the age of AI, things get even more automated than it was in the past. So there's lots of under the surface which you don't have to take care anymore and which is completely automated, but it's based on data. So you need to have lots of accurate data to make these processes and automated things work. So there's actually less manual influence you can take on the campaigns and all the things you're doing for the online campaigns. But the question is Google the only bad guy which takes away all the manual processes, or is there maybe something else which has changed over time? Yes, there is. So there were quite a few changes over time. But so let's talk about data first. Over the last years, the amount of data we can access and we have in our companies and we can access from external sources has increased dramatically. So we have a huge pool of data, but the majority of that data is never analyzed. It's not being used for optimizations, for other purposes. So the majority of data is not really used to optimize things and to get better. So the value which is within the data is very often untapped and not really used for optimization. So there's a potential to get better. And what's the reason for that? So if you think of it, and there are a few statistics. So if you're a web analyst, 80% of the data which is being analyzed is still being descriptive. So there's no modeling behind that. It's just descriptive, just dashboards, just reports. That's it. That's actually very difficult to get a real value or an action out of descriptive data. 90% of the employees say that the work is slowed down by unreliable data sources. And oftentimes, people just have a bad gut feeling on the data. These days, maybe especially with GA4, I don't know, like how many of you use GA4? Google Analytics? Quite a few. Are you happy with it? Nah, that needs to be changed. But that's what I meant. Like there's a bad gut feeling. Some things are maybe not really working. There are some issues you have with the data. You really don't really trust the data. And that's not good for taking action on it. And very often, analytics data is just out of date. You just don't trust it. So those are issues which companies are working with, and it's just difficult to get more. But there's more than the data. Something else happened over the last years, and it's basically three things. User privacy. So the expectation from users have risen a lot over the last years. What's happening with that data? Who is accessing that data? GDPR, of course, has taken a huge effect on that. So the expectation has grown a lot from the users. So you have to do much, much more as it was like 10 years ago, where it was basically the wild, wild west, and you could basically do whatever you wanted with the user data. That's not possible anymore. Also, the platforms have changed a lot, starting with Apple, who introduced quite a few things in terms of privacy, and people and website owners just have to adapt to. And then there's the regulation. So let's talk about regulation. There's a long way we have came from. So when I was working for Google, I started there end of 2005 and was responsible for Google Analytics in a few countries. And I had lots of discussions. I'm from Germany, so lots of people, we are very, very critical when it comes to privacy and data and so on, and also GDPR originated from Germany, so very critical audience. And whenever someone approached me, any of the DPOs, and asked me like, isn't it not legal or maybe critical to use Google Analytics, I always said, nah, we have safe harbor. Safe harbor, that's the agreement between the European Union and the US, which makes it legal to transfer data from the EU to the US. That's fine. So that was always my argument, and it was fine. But then, in 2015, the court of the EU said that safe harbor is not valid anymore. That was difficult, so I didn't have an argument anymore. Then a bit later, the Privacy Shield was introduced, which was a new arrangement between the EU and the US. Everything fine again, a new agreement. And then there were a few things happening over time until 2020, when the EU court says the EU-US Privacy Shield is not valid. So, no argument. And then there was a time when it was really difficult to argue because there were some standard contractual clauses introduced by the different tool providers from Google, from Facebook, and so on. But there was like an intermediate solution and not the final solution until last year, where we had this EU-US data privacy framework. So right now, from the legal perspective, there is an official legal framework which builds the basis to send data or to track data in the EU and send it to the US and to US tool providers. So now we are again pretty much on the safe side, but we have to do our homework as companies. And doing our homework means we have to concentrate and focus on first-party data, because, you know, deprecation of third-party cookies is taking place, already has taken place in some browsers, even though Chrome a few weeks has announced that they're not going to deprecate third-party cookies entirely, but still, you need to focus on first-party data and to build an infrastructure for that to make the most of that data you have available. That's really critical for the future, to own your data, to own the processes, to own the infrastructure, and not to rely on any third-party tool providers, not to rely on American tools, but to have your own infrastructure, because once you have that, then you can do something with it. Then you can do the modeling, the ML stuff, the AI stuff. So you need to own that infrastructure yourself. And how to get there? That's a pretty clear process, and we're going to go through these different steps. So we start, where is it? Right here. You have to do your homework. So when implementing tools, when implementing Google Analytics or GA4 or any other tool, basically, you have to do your homework and to be privacy safe, to track as much data as possible and as much data as it is legally allowed. So let's start with the laying out the foundation. One thing when implementing Google Analytics or any other tracking tool, we usually recommend to go on server-side tracking. Who of you is doing that? Who of you is doing server-side tracking? Just a few hands, maybe 5 or so, so there's a lot of potential. The difference of the past when it was client-side tracking was that you implemented a JavaScript tag on your code, and once a user opened the browser and surfs to a website, the JavaScript code was executed and sent information to, let's say, Google Analytics. That has some advantages, but also some disadvantages. The disadvantage is that it's on the client side, so it can be manipulated if the user implement any ad blockers. They block the tracking and the execution of the JavaScript code and sending data to Google Analytics. So you have less information in the tools because it can be manipulated by the users. In contrast, switching over to server-side tracking means that there's a step in between. So there's basically one line of information from the website to your own server, which is hosted by you, which is owned by you. And from there, all the information goes to Google Analytics, to Facebook, to Meta, to any other third-party tools. So basically what you do, you own the infrastructure and the process. You can manipulate the data, you can change it, you can clear it up, you can do it privacy safe before sending anything to anyone else. So the process is entirely in your own hands, and you own that process. And that has a few advantages. One thing is the site load is faster because you don't have like 10 different marketing pixels on the website, but only one, which sends the data to your own cloud. And from there, you distribute it to the other third-party vendors. So it makes the website faster, which is usually nice from the Google perspective. You control and own the information. You can clear it up, so it's privacy safe. And you can get rid of the ad blockers, which is on the next slide. The disadvantage is you have to take care of it. You have to set it up. You have to take care and maintain your own servers. So there's a bit of cost involved, but usually it's a pretty fast process and fast implementation thing to set up. So it usually takes a few days to set it up, and it's not very costly. But it's safe because then you own the process. Ad blockers. In the German-speaking countries, so Germany, Austria, Switzerland, usually around 40% use ad blockers. So 40% means you have 40% less data, because if you have client-side tracking, and that refers, let's say, to Google Analytics, you have 40% less data by everyone who uses ad blockers, because those tools are automatically blocked by ad blockers. If you have it on your own server and have the server-side tracking, everything goes via your own domain or your own subdomain. That means they won't be blocked by ad blockers anymore, so you have more data and more accurate data in your systems, in Google Analytics, which then you can use for bidding purposes, for your marketing campaigns. And let's go through an example. So this is my company. It's just a made-up example. I'm position number 1. I pay €1.50 for a click, 2,000 clicks, so I pay €3,000. I have a conversion rate of 5%. Making 100 conversions, €15,000, all fine. My competition is number 2. They pay less, so they get less clicks. They pay less, less conversions. They have a conversion rate of only 4%, so I'm better than them, definitely. But we do have the same a consent rate on the consent banner of 70%. So 70% of the users accept it, all fine. I'm still number 1. 70 conversions are being tracked and go to the systems of Google Ads, for example. So it's fine. I have a return on ad spend, and I can spend up to €1.50 for my campaigns. My competition is worse, so they can spend less. That's why I'm number 1. All good. But what happens if my competition is faster than me and is working on their consent mode by doing various things to get more information, more data, which can go into the systems, into the bidding algorithm? So suddenly, if they do something, they have let's just assume they have a 100% consent rate. Then they finally have a higher return on ad spend and can spend more than I can with €1.70. So suddenly they are number 1. They are higher ranked than me in the algorithms, and I'm just number 2 then. So the effect of working on the consent mode and working on the consent banner and trying to get as many conversions and as much data as possible into the systems is really business critical to be better than the competition, because otherwise they will be. And how are we going to do that? So first, if we have a lower return on ad spend, I need to work on how to get as many conversions into the bidding algorithms and the systems as possible. And there are ways to do that, which I'm going to touch in the next 2 slides. I should try to use these automated things which are available on the different tools and not to do things manually, because usually these automated things, based on a lot of data, and the more data I can give them, the better the algorithms can work. And then I, of course, should always try to overperform the competition and have a close look at them. But how do I get more information? One thing is the consent mode. So who of you is actually using Google Analytics and has implemented consent mode? Good. I hope you did that since March, because March 6th was the date when you had to implement it. There are two ways of doing that, and the secret behind that is that Google is actually tracking things in a privacy-safe way to get more information or to get at least the conversions into the system, and by that have more accurate data and more conversions being tracked in analytics, as well as then being sent to the different systems. The next thing is enhanced conversions, which is also a way to get more information. So if you have a form where users can sign up or buy something, and they need, for example, to give in their email address, then what you can do is to activate enhanced conversions. And what Google is doing then is they take that email address in a hashed way, and it's a privacy-safe hashed way. It's with the SHA-256 algorithm. And they take that hashed email address, and they match it with their own hashing algorithm and the email addresses they have. So it's a hashed match, basically. And if it's matched, then they can use that information from all the Google information you have, from Gmail account, Google account, Maps, and so on. And they can combine it and push that information back into the system, into Google Analytics, but also then from there to Google Ads, to DV360 search ads, and so on. And with that, without measurement and without any optimization, you just have a certain percentage of accuracy of data. But when doing the consent mode, the enhanced conversions, and some other things to optimize the amount of data being tracked, you have a higher percentage of conversions in the systems, higher amount of data in the systems, which then can be used for optimization of campaigns. So there's a huge discrepancy. And for example, when we implemented server-side tracking, usually, in average, we have an increase of data of 5 to 15%. So 5 to 15% more data in the systems, which is quite a lot, which with the systems can actually then work with, and the algorithms can work with. So the more data you provide, the better they can work. So basically, to sum it up, at least this part, is take care of server-side tracking, take care of the consent mode, which you already have done, ideally. Try to think of enhanced conversions. Take into consideration also offline conversions and put those into the systems when you can. And also, of course, if you have a mobile app, also take care of that information and try to combine everything with another. That's the homework you should do to get accurate and lots of data. The next step is to harmonize the information, because we all have many, many different data silos. We have CRM, we have Google Analytics, we have ads, all kinds of different marketing channels, offline data, and so on. So lots of different data. So we should try to get that information and data into one place and to build up a data warehouse. It's possible with Google Cloud, of course. You can also do that with AWS or Azure. And the thing is basically to set it up to collect the data from all the different sources, to try to harmonize all the data with another, then to analyze it, to visualize it, and then try to activate it. But first, you have to have all the different data sources in one place, centrally stored. So basically, your data warehouse should be your single source of truth where everything is in, and you own that processes. It's not somewhere else with a third-party provider. It's your own data, your own infrastructure, and you can do something with it. Once it's centralized and you have all the data in one place, your wish usually is to do something with it. You don't just want to have it, and you just don't want to do any nice dashboards and reports to send around. You want to activate that information. And that's the next step, to really take care of activating that information you have. So basically, everyone usually has a CRM. That's all the information you have in there from your users. You might have a data warehouse where everything is centralized. But what's the missing part is the activation part, to really take the action to activate it across different marketing channels and to orchestrate the different user journeys. And that's where a customer data platform, a CDP, comes into the game. So what a CDP basically does is you can segment the audience across different channels in one central place. You can collect and activate that, you can orchestrate the user journey, and you have the ID stitching, because every single data source has a separate ID, and what you want to do is basically to have a golden record, like the unique ID across all the different marketing channels you have, to have the real unique user, which you can then address at different channels. So this is how it looks like. It looks like a complicated chart, but basically it isn't. So on the left hand, you have all the different data silos. It's your CRM system, analytics system, marketing tools, apps, social media, TikTok, whatever you do, all the channels are there and you should connect it with a central place, which is like owned by yourself, where you have like a 360-degree profile of the users, no matter where they come from. If it's offline, online, social media, search, a display, whatever channel it is. And then you do the segmentation, orchestration, and then the activation on the right side in all the different platforms based on this 360-degree. With that, you can integrate it with AI, MN models, recommendation engines to really make use of that information. So basically what it does is you can do the segmentation of the audiences across, like no matter where they come from. This is an example screenshot where say, I want to have male people of a different age, specific behavior in the past, and you want to have a specific a segment of users you can then address. And to address them is the activation, so you can address them in whatever channel. And this is basically how it looks like. You can set up rules and saying, this specific segment, having done this and that over the last 2 weeks, the next useful thing they should have is a newsletter or an SMS or a display campaign or search. So you can basically activate that across the different channels based on all the 360-degree information you have. The ID stitching I already mentioned. It's usually done by the CDP provider, so they can do the ID stitching across all the different channels to have one golden record. Also the content orchestration, because on all different touch points you have, you might have a different content. But if you orchestrate that and put them together, then you can see and know where you're legally allowed to use that information to have a touch point with different clients. So usually if you think of a CDP, you might think, oh, that's a large project, super expensive. I need to buy very expensive products. It takes so much time to implement things. But there are different ways around that. So thinking of it, you can buy a tool from Adobe, from Salesforce, from Oracle or so. Then you pay a huge amount of money, and it takes a lot of time to implement it. And then you're stuck with this different external tool providers. Or you can build your own tool, which usually also takes a while and usually longer than expected, to build your own CDP. Or you can do something in between, like to have a hybrid model, a buy and build approach, where you take the best of both worlds. And that's usually what we recommend, because doing that means that the phase one or the zone one is the data zone. So we take care of the connections to all the different data, to all the different data sources, to the different data silos, to connect everything in the data zone. That can be on Google Cloud, AWS, Azure, wherever you want to have that, but that's yours. That's owned by you. That's your own infrastructure on your own servers. And that's where everything comes together. The zone 2 is basically just the CDP interface. And that can be any kind of composable CDP provider, which just provides the interface to the marketers. So this is the marketer zone. This is the data zone for the data scientists. So the marketers need to have an interface where they can do the segmentation, the drag and drop stuff, and do the activation on all the different channels, whatever it is. Technically, it might look like this. So you need to have a connection, API connections to all the different tools to put that into the zone 1, into the data zone. There you can, like this is the example of Google Cloud, all the different modules, Vertex AI, especially BigQuery, of course, which is super powerful. And then you can build that up internally with all the different modules from Google Cloud or any of the other providers. And then the zone 2 is something which is just providing the interface, and you can exchange it. So in a few years, if you're not happy with the CDP provider anymore, you can change it because you still own that infrastructure which is run by yourself. And they take care of all the connections to the different data sources. So this really makes sense because then it's your infrastructure, it's owned by you, it's privacy safe. So a few of the advantages is that it's usually much, much faster to integrate, to implement. It's cost efficient, it's faster to implement, and it's completely owned by you, which makes it privacy safe. So when we set it up, we say usually at the beginning a very granular scoping. So we sit together with a few stakeholders. Of course, we talk to the DPOs because it's very important to get them on board as well. And then we start simple with very basic use cases. So we work on use cases at the beginning with the different workshops we do, and we define use cases, many, many different use cases for all kinds of different departments and stakeholders. And then we basically work on a template and a kind of roadmap depending on what's the business impact and what's the effort to implement. And then we have some more future stuff and some basic stuff to gain some like immediate actions. And things we can do, for example, immediately is the suppression of existing customers, because you have that information available, and then you can get rid of those users which you already have as clients and not to address them anymore on campaigns. And this is more the advanced stuff going into product recommendations, personalization, customer lifetime value evaluation, predictions, and so on. And once you have that, and I have to be a bit faster now, as I can see, once you have all that information, you can go into prediction and predict the conversion probability. You can go into customer lifetime value prediction, churn rate prediction, whatever the business model you have, you can work on that information and then use that information as segments in the CDP to activate it, right? So it's all based on the same data set. And if you think of the bid strategies in the past, in the old days, you optimized your Google Ads campaigns on pure sales value or on return on ad spend or maybe on profit or on value. But it's even better to think about the customer lifetime value and put that into perspective with your different ads and put that information in the bidding system. So that's the setup you have. And once you have all that, then you can go into the automation. So you automate all the different processes. You can think of scoring different user behavior, the content scoring, like what categories people are looking at, and give them a score and take that scoring also into the bidding system to automate and to activate your campaigns. And when you now think of media campaigns you might do, there's usually still lots of monkey work which needs to be done, from creatives, from processes, until things are really working and running. So many of these things can be automated when really thinking of it, and this is just a complex, I'm not going to go through all the details, but this is just an example of how things can look like to completely and entirely automate the online marketing process also for display ads and video ads by using all the different modules which are already available and connecting them with another. So basically, in a nutshell, try to put everything together to set up your own infrastructure to really own and maintain that infrastructure. And once you have that, you can work on this complete life cycle of users. You can have all the information. If it's their birthday and you want to send out an SMS, if it's about to repurchase something, you can use that information because you have already predicted when the next purchase should already be. And you have all that information and you can use that in your system. And it's not rocket science, it just needs to be set up. So basically, where we are right now is still, again, this iceberg. And if you ask yourself where you should invest, more on the campaign side or in people to optimize your campaigns manually, or if you should invest on everything which is below the water level. And this is like the analytics. You should invest into data engineers, into cloud architects, into data scientists to really make use of all the information you already have, but it's already, or usually it's spread across different data silos anywhere in your company. So this is basically where I should try to invest anything on the infrastructure, data scientists to really make use of the information and then let the rest basically do the automated stuff. So that's about it. Just a few words about myself. Already introduced, my name is Timo from Digitl. I'm originally from Germany, in Hamburg. That's where we are headquartered. We're focusing on Google Marketing Platform and cloud services. So if you have any questions on Google Marketing Platform products, interested, as you already said, in the introduction and actually getting off the licenses, just contact me. Or if you're interested in any of the Google Cloud services, just contact me. We have a remote first approach. So we're not only in Hamburg, we are basically in lots of different locations. And those are the things we basically do. One unit is focusing on Google, the other focusing on the tech part of cloud. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I will be around today here, so just feel free to approach me, and thanks a lot for your attention. Do we have time for questions?
Couple minutes. So there's one question regarding Google Analytics 4. And the question sounds like this. So does GA4 require changes to cookie consent management tools?
Basically, the consent management, yes, well, there's a huge list of CMPs, consent management tool, the content management tools, and they can be integrated with the Google Tag Manager. So there's a huge list provided by Google, and they have cooperations with all the different tools. But definitely, if you use GA, if you use GTM, you should definitely take care of that to implement it the correct way.
Let me be blunt and ask you directly. How much does it cost, to build a solution, the one that you showed us?
Yeah. Well, my usual answer is it depends. It depends on the size of the company. So, for example, we have just set exactly this thing up for a huge international company in Germany called Douglas. I don't know if you know that. Like, they're doing cosmetics and stuff. That was quite a big project for us. It took us half a year to implement everything. So usually, if you do that with Adobe or so, it takes 2 years to implement things. It took us half a year to implement the whole process within 8 different countries. That was a super fast process. For them, it was a bit bigger because very large corporations. But usually, I would say, it depends on the complexity, how international it is. But to set it up, it also depends on the use cases. And what I would recommend is not to implement everything all at once, but to go from use case to use case to use case. And then you can start with the easier ones, just laying the foundations, and then you can go over time to the more complex ones. But the good thing of that approach is that already when you've implemented the first use case, you can already use it. So you don't have to wait until the full project is done. You can start immediately. And we usually say, when we have defined the first use case, after 8 weeks, it's done. So after 8 weeks, you can already use the first use case, which already has an impact on the business.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Timo. So for all of you who want to ask Timo any questions about tracking and analytics and what's in the future with tracking, there's APG Media stand right next to us and outside the hall. Timo, he will be around. Please join him and talk to him and ask any questions.
All right. Thanks a lot.